You can go down a very deep rabbit hole with this, but you definitely don't want a world as they're trying to put together here. It's definitely something I would not want to live in.
You've got people voting for politicians who claim that they want you to have more freedom and lower taxes, and then they support this kind of bullshit. It's absolute insanity.
To say that the end game for people who don't comply is homelessness and to be destitute is entirely cold. This one is shocking to see.
You opt out, you leave the country, you use different platforms, you support companies that are not favoring this garbage. You vote, you act, you do something other than simply complain.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Banter. I have Greer and Tony with me. Gents, let's jump right into the news. So, AG Bondi says, we are bringing in our National Guard into every city we possibly can in the wake of the CIA-linked Afghan shooter in D.C. last week. And Diligent Denizen says, of course you are. Greer, why don't you frame, you were, I was out of town last week, wasn't really following along with the news as closely. Why don't you explain the context for this, and then we can talk about what the implications are.
Yeah, this one makes me a little nervous. I can see why they'd want to bring in the National Guard to reduce terrorist threats or to deal with illegal immigrants. I think those things are all good, and I think most people in your city would cheer that on. Let's make sure that the people aren't dangerous and are allowed to be here because they follow the proper channels. I think where this gets a little bit worrisome is how long are they going to stay? What is their purpose? As somebody who follows the law and pays their taxes and does what they're supposed to as a citizen, do they have anything to worry about the National Guard taking over their city? What does it look like from identifying yourself, for moving around, for getting from one place to another? To me, this is what sort of lights the fire for conspiracy theorists. And while I do think there are many conspiracies that are true, we just haven't been told yet, I could see how this one sort of at the surface looks great. And then as this really plays out, isn't exactly what we want. So I know with Pam Bondi, a lot of what she's said hasn't come to fruition. Maybe this will be another case, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah. To me, the threat is both that this is completely unconstitutional and that it's a terrible precedent, that this becomes normalized. And then any, regardless of who instigates any crisis, quote unquote crisis, becomes justification for them to send troops in, basically. And you end up very quickly with a police state, if we're not already there, of course. Tony, looking from abroad, what's your take on this?
Yeah, man, I'm right along with you. This doesn't smell good to me. It smells very sinister. It's almost like, the example of the firefighter causing the fire just to come and, put it out. Um, you can go down a very deep rabbit hole with this, but you definitely don't want a world, as they're trying to put together here. It's definitely something I would not want to live in.
Yeah. So the unfortunate conclusion to government overreach is at some point you see things like this. So the New Republican movement of Ireland has put a target on anyone ruining the lives of the Irish and who compromise the safety of women and children. And so this is obviously a very scary looking video. These guys have they're armed, although not not as extensively as I would have imagined for a video like this. But if you listen to the audio, they talk about protecting women and children and illegal immigration and how it's destroying sort of the fabric of their culture in Ireland. And I fear, and Tony, I think you can elaborate. You've been talking about this a lot. That at some point people just get fed up. They're done with the CBDCs, the digital IDs, the influx of immigrants who aren't a cultural fit for any society. So why don't you explain what you see here, and if you think this is something that we're likely to see here in many countries around the world?
I've been talking and warning about this forever because to me, it's like an unavoidable ending to a very bad story. There's only so much bullying you can do. And, at one point, when law becomes tyranny, well, then resistance like this becomes your duty, right? And so when people see their lives, being suffocated in every direction, at some point, they're going to draw the line and push back. And this is not a scenario I want to see play out anywhere. But at the same time, the way things are going, I just don't see how this is avoidable. I've seen this in my own country, it didn't end well. My concern about the US is simply because, you have 400 million privately owned assault weapons, if not more. So if a small percentage of these guys, are, put also draw the line in the sand and are fed up because things are simply not improving, well, now you've got a really, really bad movie on your hands. And how you deal with that is anybody's guess.
Greer, what would you add?
Yeah, I think we're headed towards the fourth turning, and we're in the midst of it, to be honest. And I don't encourage violence at any stage. To me, this looks like the things could get messy. And while I agree with both of you, I think this will start to become more of an occurrence around the world. The U.S. Yes, we do have a Second Amendment that we love. We also have so much to lose. I think this could occur in certain pockets where things have gone really bad, where the government is getting involved or not getting involved, and I think it's up to the people to determine what kind of life they want to live. I hope that things don't resort to this level, but as we move through these very chaotic times, it feels like it's more and more inevitable. Hopefully it's not. Violence is not the answer, but I think resistance is very important.
Agree. Alrighty. So Australian Patriot says this is going to come to Australia, and it's footage circulating online showing a large number of homeless people in Xi'an. And critics say China's expanding social credit system is to blame. According to these reports, once someone is blacklisted, they can lose access to banking services and digital payments, including WeChat Wallet. This means no spending your money, no receiving salary, and no way to function in a society that runs almost entirely on digital transactions. I would argue that yes, this is coming to Australia, which obviously Australian Patriot cares most about, but this is coming everywhere in my view, and it's only a matter of time. We're seeing this we've been talking about digital IDs and CBDCs and all of these technologies for quite some time. Tony, what would you say about this?
No one should be accepting this. Resistance, towards this should be at full throttle. If you fall into a world of digital IDs, your life literally no longer belongs to you. Every aspect of it is dictated by someone else. So again, you are no different than, the life of a donkey at that point. And people might think, oh, it'll keep me safer, it'll keep, things more efficient, a lot more structured. That is a very naive and very stupid take on things because, given enough power, anyone will abuse it. And so if your life is in the hands of a psychopath, that is just hungry for just having fun, at the expense of others, well, you're going to learn a very, very brutal lesson, and by then it might be too late for you to get out of it.
Yeah. Greer, I think my concern with this sort of thing is that first of all, this is already beginning to happen in Australia, if not on the scale of China. But there's still this complacency. I think most people in Western nations feel that, well, it's not going to happen here. And what's happening in the UK or Australia, well, like where it's very demonstrably dark, well, it's not going to happen in my backyard. And to me, it's inevitable if we don't stand up and do something about it. If there is no resistance. What are you thinking when you see a story like this?
This is incredibly cruel and inhuman treatment of people. To say that the end game for people who don't comply is homelessness and to be destitute is entirely cold. And this one is shocking to see. I think in the United States, when you see a homeless person, it's very common to think they've made poor life choices. They somehow got into drugs or alcohol or took fentanyl, and their only hope is rehab and recovery and for the state to take care of them or to completely ignore them. And I think that what we're seeing here is totally different. This is you are being pushed into homelessness through the choices you make that have nothing to do with illicit behavior. It's simply whether or not you chose to comply. And I think that's quite a stark difference. And not to say that the homeless situation we have in the United States isn't important. It certainly is. But I think what we need to find out is how do we restore people who are in these types of situations? What kind of community help can be provided that isn't government funded? And how can we, bring these people back into a life that has dignity and purpose? In the United States, homelessness is a huge problem, and those are big questions. And there are lots of charities that are trying to solve this, and churches and community groups. And I think what we want is to find technology that helps people get out of a dire situation rather than push them into it. So, this incredibly cold hearted digital world that we're walking into, to me, is very bleak. It's grim, but thankfully, there are ways that you can opt out of this. And I think as people understand what those are through Bitcoin, through decentralized communication, using the internet to your advantage to create a business and build a life for yourself, to me, I think that there is hope, but it is a sliver at this point.
Yeah. And on the US homeless problem, I think most of that is downstream of terrible, terrible, evil, and corrupt money, of course. But if you add in the fact that you've got people who want to be helpful, want to pitch in, they're losing 10% of their purchasing power to inflation each year, on top of 30-40% of their of tax money leaving. You're hamstrung in your ability to help because you're trying to make ends meet. And so the solution always becomes, well, the people who cause this, the government has to step in because the churches aren't stepping up. And it's not that the churches or the community organizations don't want to, but they're strapped for cash. They don't have the ability to help it at the order of magnitude that they'd like. So sad times, but I'm hopeful that it doesn't come to Australia, and people start waking up and fighting this as quickly as possible. Alrighty, from leading report, breaking: U.S. air travelers without real IDs will be charged a $45 fee per AP. Greer, it's happening, man. We're gonna have to use exclusively passports moving forward, I think, to travel.
Yeah, that's right. The passport is the way to get around this, and it looks like the fee will be collected right at the gate by TSA or through one of their trusted third parties. So Real ID is increasing around the states, and it's becoming normalized. And of course, we know earlier this year that the U.S. demanded that all flying travelers have Real ID. So I look at this and I think sort of the walls are closing in. There is still a way out, but again, the advancement of technology appears to be unstoppable. And in the wrong hands, this is something that we will have to deal with the consequences of this.
Tony, is this a problem for you, where you travel yet, or is this sort of a U.S. based issue?
No, not really. I mean, I think this is US based, but there seems to be a common theme with the push to some form of digital ID, no matter where you are. It's not a coincidence, not that, in every corner of the world, some lunatic is trying to push for this. The problem why it feels so dire is that there's no pushback from the people. Everybody seems to feel that, they're helpless and that there's nothing they can do, which is the farthest thing from the truth. These people are relying on you thinking that way and not doing anything about it. And this is how your life gets, worse and worse every time they come up with a stupid idea like this. If we want change, it's up to the people. But if the people don't react, then they're a bigger problem than the problem itself. And to me, this is more aggravating than anything, is because the solutions are clear, but nobody seems to want them. But instead, they just enjoy complaining about them. Complaining is for stupid people. You want action, do it. Otherwise, don't expect change.
Yeah. I would add too, like, one of the things I've learned since I started my Bitcoin journey is that sometimes you have to opt for inconvenience in order to circumvent the rules and the compliance requirements that people have. And sometimes it's going to cost more, sometimes it's going to be more painful, but at the end of the day, your life is going to be better for non-compliance and finding ways to circumvent these idiots. Okay, we've got Meta now lobbying Canada to make age verification mandatory at the App Store level. The pitch is obviously privacy protective, but the effect is the opposite: a universal ID gate for the internet. Basically, you have to remove your anonymity to prove that you're able to download apps. Greer, it's coming to North America, it looks like, and I imagine it's only a matter of time before we see it here in the U.S.
Yeah, I think anytime a politician is offered money, it's irresistible. So the lobbying to me says that Meta is making sure that the politicians who are going to vote their way are have the war chest to be able to make this stuff happen. And it looks like Meta is also not just advocating for just their platforms, but the entire internet access for Canadians. If you didn't have a warning sign that maybe there's a better place to live, I think this one is it. I can say personally, I think about this every day, even where I am, which is very safe in America. I think about what are the steps that I need to secure a plan B. So I think that we should be exploring these ways to opt out and say no. And if you can't vote with your ballot, ultimately, sometimes you have to vote with your feet. But again, this is, do you trust Canada to push back on this? Absolutely not.
Yeah. I think the trap everyone falls into over and over and over is they evaluate a policy based on whether or not they like it, whether or not they think it's like, for example, I have kids. I don't want my kids to be download. I mean, they're young, but when they get to that age, I don't want them downloading any and every app that they ever want to. But that's my job. It's not my responsibility to impose that through government proxy on everyone else's kids. If you want to be an idiot and let your kids download whatever, that's your business. My kids are going to outperform your kids on every metric by the way I raise them. If you're just letting your kids run wild on the internet, that's your foolish decision to make. I don't want the government anywhere near this. And because it sounds nice and it sounds privacy protective, so many people just say, I mean, you've got people voting for politicians who claim that they want you to have more freedom and lower taxes, and then they support this kind of bullshit. It's absolute insanity. Tony.
Yeah, man, this is like if in case it wasn't abundantly clear right now, there's a war being waged worldwide on everyone, a war against your privacy, a war against your financial situation, a war against you as a human being, and again, it's by the same cartel, if you want, of folks that believe they have the right to play God and dictate every aspect of your life. These companies, Meta, is not enshrined in stone. Like, stop using this fucking garbage. These companies are not your friends. This platform was popular at one point, but now clearly it's no longer in your best interest to remain using it. If you think countries like Canada are going to push back against this, you are extremely naive. Canada is a lost country, along with any other country that's currently infected by that same cancerous political cartel that is, dictating this garbage left and right on a weekly basis. Again, the solution to this is very easy, but no one seems to want it bad enough. It's a people's movement. The people need to resist. The problem isn't going to magically disappear because you're complaining all day on the same platforms that are being weaponized against you. This is not how you fix a situation. You opt out, you leave the country, you use different platforms, you support companies that are not, favoring this garbage. You vote, you act, you do something other than simply complain. And that's the only way things change. Like, your freedom is not given to you. It never was given to you. It has to be taken. You have to take it. But to do that, you have to want it bad enough. If you don't, then you lose the right to complain. You keep your mouth shut and you suffer the consequences of that, silly decision.
100%. Okay, the story that never quite dies. This is from Cointelegraph. Just in, China's central bank reaffirmed its crypto ban and warned it will intensify its crackdown on stablecoins. Glad to hear that they're going to intensify their crackdown on stablecoins, I guess, but they're just going to push everyone into their CBDC. Greer, this one, I mean, I feel like it's like every 3 months there's some new China crackdown on crypto and Bitcoin. Do you think this one sticks?
No, I don't. I think, the central bank in China has a lot of gold. And so perhaps they'll develop something with a gold backed digital currency. But who knows? I think, what they're looking for is control. Thankfully, Bitcoin cannot be controlled. A lot of mining still occurs in China. So it's funny to hear the central bank say that they're going to, they're reaffirming their ban when right next to them, blocks are being mined every single day. So I think Bitcoin's inevitable. I do think it's the answer. It's the way that the individual can gain freedom over their own life and their own sovereignty. And especially when we're talking about things getting dark wherever you live, Bitcoin is the money that allows you to cross borders effortlessly taking all of your value and all the wealth that you've created with you. So, the haters for Bitcoin ultimately bend the knee. And I think we'll see that. Maybe China will be the last to bend the knee, but unfortunately for them, they will.
Yeah. All righty. Tony, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to
No,
comment here. I
man,
feel
it's
like,
just the best ad for Bitcoin and Plan B residencies is our stories like this. That's round 10 for you. Let's go.
yeah, I imagine eventually China is going to make it more difficult. I mean, it seems like they're trying to. They haven't figured it out because that's what a decentralized, digital currency is. But uh, I mean, these countries are operating as though Bitcoin, stable coins, whatever, exist in isolation. And the reality is you can't stop them. It is the unstoppable force, as Tony says. Okay, up next, we've got a study by economists at the University of Chicago and Northwestern find that Gen Z young adults who see little chance of ever owning a home are more likely to invest in Bitcoin, trying to, quote, get ahead. Greer, we got some good news.
Yeah, this is the way. I love seeing this. And I'm hoping that the article refers to Bitcoin and not crypto. I think Bitcoin is the only way to get ahead. And I think as Gen Z starts seeing that Bitcoin continues to go up in value, regardless of today's price or the short-term price, this is digital property. So I think once they understand that and once they start to move into it, unfortunately, the price going up is usually what draws people into Bitcoin. You come for the greed and you stay for the sovereignty. But I think this is a great headline. I hope that more Gen Z and Gen Alpha start to see what Bitcoin offers. And I think we'll see that as the technology and the user experiences increases.
Tony, everyone's waking up to the Bitcoin escape hatch.
This is great, man. When you hit rock bottom, ultimately the only way is back up. If you survive, the hellhole that you're in, you're only going to look for solutions that improve your situation. And going forward, Bitcoin is definitely it. It's no longer the legacy system. That world is dead. And the more people opt out of it, quickly, the better it is for them.
Alrighty. Up next, a new universal basic income experiment using cryptocurrency is underway in New York, where 160 young adults are being given $12,000 each, no strings attached, paid straight into their blockchain wallet as part of a guaranteed income study by Coinbase. What would we do without Brian Armstrong? What I'm unclear of on this story is why cryptocurrency is significant versus just giving them cash. Like, what's the intent that they're going for? I don't think the state and Coinbase are trying to fund people with self sovereignty. But Tony, what's your take?
I don't know. I guess they're trying to get you used to a digital wallet, the concept of using, crypto rather than, the legacy system. But this is a great stimulus check from Coinbase. Anyone with half a brain would dump this shit coin and buy, real money, Bitcoin in self-custody, and thank Coinbase for their generational wealth later. But it's interesting that they're doing this, and 12,000 is not a small number either. So I'm not really sure what their end game is. But for anyone receiving this, staying with this money is not the smart decision. Swap it for real sound money in your full control. That's the way forward.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic that people are buying Bitcoin and then using the difference to hire the Bitcoin way to take self custody with this 12 grand. But maybe I'm thinking we're getting a lot of flat screen TVs, bags of fentanyl, and who knows what else. Greer, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm curious on the details of this. Do they expect these 162 people to take this 12 grand and buy meme coins, or is it to start using Tether or USDC as a digital dollar at various retail locations, or do they just send it to their fiat bank account and spend it on snacks? I think this is one of those ideas where it sounds really great. Let's give people free money, but ultimately, this is not what makes a man wealthy, unless you smash by and get your more than zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. I think that's the only silver lining that could possibly be the outcome. But I think the odds of any of these, it's probably less than one person out of 160 that will buy 12 grand worth of Bitcoin and then wait 4 or 5 years.
Well, don't forget Zcash, right? The hot new privacy commodity on the block. Don't do that, guys. Buy Bitcoin if you're one of the 160 people listening. So Vanguard has now capitulated. They're allowing clients to access cryptocurrency ETFs and funds starting tomorrow, which I think is today. I think the story broke yesterday. Everyone bends the knee eventually. I think their CEO, I can't remember, was he fired or did
Yes.
he? Okay, yeah. So he said sort of over his dead body, and he's out. So now they want to make money again, I guess. Tony,
What?
exciting news. Do you
One
care?
by one, they all fall down, man. They all bend the knee because, it's again, it's a high demand. They're going to be forced to cater to their clients. I don't think people realize how big this is. I mean, I don't really care about these institutions. It really make no difference in my life. But these guys hold they unlock a lot of capital. So if you have, a lot of their clients, eventually finding their way into Bitcoin, even though it's through an ETF initially, this is going to cause a lot of movement, especially for the number go up dorks. This is going to make them very, very happy. But again, the end game is not to stay in this. The ETFs are nothing. Nothing in your life is going to change because you're still holding that same worthless toilet paper at the end of the day. Now, if they allow in-kind redemptions, and enough people understand that the way to win in Bitcoin is to own the asset directly, that's a whole different conversation. And I'm hoping, given enough time, not too long, a lot of big money will start moving in that direction.
The timing couldn't be better. Now you have the chance to buy the dip if you are a Vanguard client. Greer, what's your take?
Yeah, if you can't beat them, join them. And I think, Vanguard, probably for the truth is that they're looking at the fees that BlackRock has been able to generate from its ETF. That has to be the only reason. They know they're leaving money on the table. They don't care about Bitcoin. Yes, their clients may have been asking for it, but they've been asking for it for years. And I think, now that the ETFs have a very good year, strong year, 2 years in selling the product. The fees are what are drawing these institutional players. And I think what it means for the average person is that Bitcoin continues to be more scarce. Yes, the ETFs will have outflows like we saw recently this past week. So that gives you a chance to buy Bitcoin on the cheap. But it means that there is a demand partner that is not going to go away. I mean, where is Bitcoin going to be 10 years from now after these ETFs? I think that the end game for Bitcoin accumulation is coming closer and faster than we want. And this is just another signpost on that road.
Well said. All righty, guys. Last, this is just in. Italy's Prime Minister Meloni pushes to take possession of the nation's $300 billion of gold from the European Central Bank. We were looking this up. So, what did we say? The ECB is based in Frankfurt, I think, Germany. And my big skepticism here is, do they have $300 billion worth of gold that they could give to Italy if they wanted it? Tony, do you think she gets their gold back?
Well, man, if she accomplishes this is very good news. I mean, the more bad news that hits the ECB, the more good news it is for Europe in general. I see a lot of pushback from European countries against the EU, the ECB in general, and to me, it's very bullish. I don't foresee the EU lasting, for the next 5 years, and I'm praying, a lot more European countries break away from that, regain their own sovereignty, and start building, their countries back up after being infected and decimated for so many years by this thieving cartel.
I think the real power play here would be if they can recover their gold and take custody of it, and then swap it for Bitcoin. That would be amazing. Although I'm not a fan of strategic Bitcoin reserves. Don't care, but it would be the best thing for her country. I hope she's able to do it. Greer, what do you think? She getting her gold?
Maybe she'll revive the Roman Empire. I think that, if it would take them years to be able to audit and then transport the gold back to Italy. But yeah, think about being able to repatriate your gold and what that would do to your own economy and your own sovereignty. So I think that, I cheer her on. I hope it happens. But again, I think that the ECB is going to do everything they can to prevent this, to slow it down, and to give them the security assurances that the gold is still there. So, as Bitcoiners say, verify, do not trust. I would probably hire Danny Ocean from Ocean's 11 and have his team break into the vault and secure it and drive it back to Rome. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, hey, by the way, one important point to make here is that it will take a long time for them to audit and understand what they actually have if they're even able to get it back. If this was Bitcoin, if the central banks operated on a Bitcoin standard, which would be obviously a miracle, it could be delivered overnight, in 10 minutes you could have all of your gold and the entire value of your reserve. So for the gold bugs out there who are listening skeptical of Bitcoin, it's a pretty big deal in a global digital economy. So maybe you need to start thinking about Bitcoin, buy some just in case it catches on. Alrighty, guys, I think that's a good place to stop. Thank you for joining. For everyone who tuned in, we really appreciate you being here. Stick around for another minute. You can learn a bit about the Bitcoin way, how we can help you with some of the topics that we discussed today. But, gents, we're good to get back together. Look forward to catching up again soon. Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Cheers. Hey there, thank you for tuning into Bitcoin Banter. Wanted to take a quick minute to remind you to head on over to thebitcoinway.com/podcast to schedule a free 30-minute consultation with a member of our team. It is critical that you take full control of your wealth, and we can equip you with the skills needed to take 100% self-custody of your Bitcoin. For our existing clients, we also offer our Bitcoin Bootcamp, where we will conduct quarterly calls with you to reinforce the training we've provided and fill any gaps in your knowledge. While you're at it, ask about our solo mining service, something we think everybody should be doing. We also help with addressing your personal and online cybersecurity, and we can even help you set up a privacy phone free of big tech and Big Brother surveillance. Don't underestimate the amount of tracking taking place in your browser and in the apps you use every day. And finally, whether you're ready to make a move to a freedom-loving paradise or want to back up in the event of a worst-case scenario, be sure to ask about our Plan B residency program. Being untethered from a single location is one of the best ways to ensure your self-sovereignty into the future. Again, you can schedule a free consultation at thebitcoinway.com/podcast. If you are enjoying the show, please do me a favor, subscribe to our channel wherever you listen, give us a 5-star review, and drop us a comment. We would really appreciate it, and it makes it easier for others to begin finding us as we preach the gospel of financial self-sovereignty and beyond. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay sovereign, and remember, the yield on Bitcoin is freedom.